So I felt that Puffy was a regular, normal guy. And then when he started hanging with the guys in the industry, they did things to him. And then allegedly, he did things to Usher. It goes on and on. But we got to stop just pointing the finger at the person who gets caught with their hand in the cookie jar. Where did it start from? But see, people don't want to touch on those angles that they started being the major executives who run these labels. His daughters and his sons, his kids, basically. That's never a good sign for nobody to cheer about when it comes to kids or young men being handcuffed. Mike, not cutting you off, but he was an informant for years.
Was he really?
Yeah. That's why when people was like, oh, he's going to run, he's not. It's the reason why these type of people get caught up. They always been telling they're bigger than the law because they part of the law, And as you know, all these people get tired of their rats sooner or later.
Back up a little bit, please.
How can you support your father? How do you support him moving forward?
Isn't that, to my mind, that's one of the bigger hurdles in selecting a jury this coming week, is that there is, at least anecdotally, when I talk to people, they have that opinion, strongly held opinion, that there's celebrity tapes, that they've kind of conflated Epstein, and you mentioned Ghislaine Maxwell and all of these things into Diddy. There's this idea that somehow this is Epstein redux or something.
She did, and when the judge did, Diddy, who was sitting at the defense table with his attorneys, did not show any signs of emotion. He took a sip of water before he was led out of the courtroom by the U.S. Marshals. Now, his lawyers have vowed to fight this. They are going to be back in court on Wednesday before the judge who will oversee this trial and try to get Diddy to be released.
Federal trafficking, racketeering, and charges beginning Monday morning.
This is going to be such a massive trial, like maybe the biggest Hollywood trial. God knows which way it's going to go. Is it going to go on for weeks?
Oh, for sure, weeks.
Well, Bill and Sade, accepting a plea agreement would mean that Sean Combs would have to admit to trafficking and force. And today he made it very clear that was not going to happen. Diddy maintained all along these encounters involved consenting adults and plans to take his chances that a jury agrees.
Elaborate, sometimes days-long parties by coercing victims through drugs, threats, and manipulation. They claim to have video evidence, and some of the accusations echo details from over 70 civil lawsuits filed against Combs over the last 30 years.
What made you come here to support Puff?
I'm supporting Puff because he's innocent, and I'm wholeheartedly believing his innocence, and I know he's innocent. So
you say you know he's innocent?
1,000%.
At trial, Combs will ditch the jail garb and wear ordinary clothes, as his lawyers argue the evidence shows consenting adults being intimate in their own way.
Major developments tonight involving the case against Sean Diddy Combs, what he decided in court today, and what this now means, the move coming just 4 days before his trial is set to begin. Here's Aaron Katursky.
Tonight, Sean Combs makes it official. He's rejecting the government's offer to plead guilty and spare himself the possibility of a prolonged term in prison. When asked if he turned down the offer, Combs answered, "Yes, I do, Your Honor," as he stood in a baggy beige jail uniform. Terms were not disclosed, but prosecutors did say a plea could result in a shorter sentence for Combs than if he's convicted.
Music mogul Sean Diddy Combs back behind bars, a magistrate judge denying him bail, saying that there were no conditions that she could conceive of that would make her confident that he would appear again for other court appearances. The judge saying, "My concern is this is a crime that happens behind closed doors."
Do you still think that, because there is this public perception, that there are celebrity tapes involved in this case?
No.
Do you still think that there are minors involved in this case?
I'm certain no.
Okay.
And again, when you say this case, we're talking the criminal case.
The criminal case.
In the
correct.
criminal.
I know that.
In the criminal case, no.
Diddy's lawyers had argued that he had made good faith efforts by showing up in New York, ready to surrender to face these charges. But prosecutors said that he could not be trusted, that he has a history of trying to intimidate witnesses, including some who are going to be witnesses in this case. They urge a judge to remand him.
What happens is if people go into a trial believing the firepower on the prosecution is so strong, I mean, let's say on a scale of 1 to 100, it's a 95 that it's so strong, but it goes down to an 88. That helps the defense because everybody goes in thinking, wow, they're going to prove this, and they're going to prove this, and they're going to prove this, and all of a sudden, none of it's there. I think that actually helps the defense.
The last hearing before Sean Combs' trial starts, when he walked into federal court today, he appeared to be looking for his family. They've pretty much been at all of the hearings that I've been to, but there was no presence of his sons or his mother or his sister who had previously been at those hearings.
He knows the deck is stacked against him. They've got a ton of evidence. Take the plea deal, dude. Just take it.
Well, my guess is that because we don't know the deal of the plea deal. At least I don't think we do.
True.
Okay.
Mr. Combs feels and I think he probably is the only person I know of who might be able to actually accomplish that.
The decision guarantees Combs will face trial beginning just 4 days from now that will test whether one of music's most prolific figures used his power, wealth, and fame to exploit both women and men for decades.
Would you be open to a plea bargain?
Well, it's not up to me. It's up to Mr. Combs, and I don't see it happening.
Why?
Because he believes he's innocent. He believes he's innocent, and what's more, he believes that he needs to stand up, not just for himself, for his family, and for everybody who's been targeted by the federal government.
We have the latest from federal court in the Sean Combs criminal case. Status of jury selection, what Diddy's going to be wearing, violation of a gag order, rejecting a plea offer.
Now, as far as jury selection goes, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that both sides expect to have all of this done in the matter of 3 days. Now, given just how high profile this trial is, I was kind of stunned that they seem very confident that they will be able to seat a jury in that amount of time.
In a federal prison infirmary, behind razor wire and concrete walls, Suge Knight was making a phone call that would detonate 3 decades of hip-hop's darkest secrets, and he was doing it from a wheelchair. You deserve to know what really happened. I'm working hard to build this channel, and I truly love your help. Why not hit subscribe and be part of this journey? The man who once terrorized boardrooms from Death Row Records now sat hunched over prison phones, his voice barely above a whisper. I walked in that room the villain and walked out the evidence. Those words, spoken to his daughter and leaked within hours, sent shockwaves through an industry already reeling from Diddy's federal indictment. But this wasn't just another jailhouse confession. Suge Knight, serving 28 years for manslaughter, had decided his best shot at early parole was full cooperation with federal prosecutors against Sean Diddy Combs, and he was bringing receipts. Inside the sterile deposition rooms of R.J. Donovan Correctional Facility, Knight began what would become 5 straight hours of testimony, mapping out a criminal enterprise that allegedly spanned decades. FBI agents, IRS investigators, and prosecutors from the Southern District's Organized Crime Task Force watched through mirrored glass as Knight sketched seating charts of private rooms at the 1998 Soul Train after-party, listed vodka brands ordered by name, and drew the exact layout of a Beverly Hills mansion where he claimed bad boy security installed cameras aimed at velvet sectionals instead of doorways. The precision was staggering. When investigators cross-checked Knight's recollections against subpoenaed flight manifests and hotel receipts, the details matched down to the final 2 digits of bar tabs. This wasn't the rambling of a desperate convict. This was testimony from someone who'd kept mental ledgers for decades, waiting for the right moment to cash them in. But Knight wasn't just offering memories. He had physical evidence that would make prosecutors' jaws drop. By day 4 of his cooperation, Knight made a stunning revelation. He'd maintained 3 storage lockers in Las Vegas since 2004, all rented under his cousin's name. Inside, federal technicians discovered a treasure trove of beta cam tapes, pager printouts, and tour bus manifests. But one piece of evidence stood out above all, a videotape dated June 12th, 1999. The footage opened with shaky handheld shots of a Miami hotel penthouse, where Diddy was caught on camera making a toast to new friends and fresh talent. Then came the moment that would haunt his defense team, Diddy explicitly instructing the cameraman to cut the red light. The camera kept rolling anyway. What followed was footage of security staff methodically ushering young performers and two well-known actors into adjoining rooms, exactly the kind of prearranged aftercare suites Knight had been describing as hush money drop zones. Prosecutors haven't released the footage publicly, but sources who viewed it say it corroborates Knight's most damaging claims about the systematic nature of these gatherings. Defense attorneys immediately challenged the chain of custody, but prosecutors countered with metadata stamped on the cassette shells and flight logs proving Combs Enterprises staff were at that exact hotel on that exact date. The tapes weren't just random party footage, they were evidence of a pattern. Knight claimed he'd kept these recordings as insurance. Knowing that in the music industry, leverage was the only real power. Now, facing life in prison, he was finally cashing in that insurance policy. But it wasn't just about parties. Knight claimed to have proof of something far darker, involving some of music's biggest names. In his most explosive testimony, Knight told investigators he was prepared to testify about an event that had remained shrouded in whispers for 25 years. The night of Usher Raymond's alleged industry introduction at Diddy's Manhattan townhouse. Knight provided specific details. He claimed to have personally witnessed a teenage Usher arrive at the townhouse looking nervous and excited, only to leave hours later appearing distraught and being escorted by a bad boy driver. While Usher himself has never publicly detailed that evening, Knight's testimony potentially connected dots to the R&B star's mysterious 2018 legal settlements over alleged herpes transmission, settlements that had fueled years of speculation about toxic early experiences under Diddy's mentorship. The implications were staggering. If Knight could back up these claims with the kind of detailed evidence he'd already provided about other events, it would establish a pattern of behavior extending back to Diddy's earliest days of power. Prosecutors reportedly view this testimony as crucial for proving their RICO charges required evidence of an ongoing criminal enterprise, not isolated incidents. Cat Williams, who'd recently scorched the internet with his Club Shay Shay interview, posted a cryptic message minutes after news of Knight's cooperation broke. "Told y'all the ice was thin. Now the big shark is circling from inside the pond." As Knight's revelations spread through sealed court filings and the strategic leaks, the industry began to crack under the pressure. Kevin Hart's silence became deafening. The comedian, who typically couldn't resist a camera, suddenly canceled 2 podcast tapings, citing family obligations. TMZ captured him leaving a Los Angeles law office flanked by 2 attorneys from the same firm representing Live Nation in harassment suits. Hart's team reportedly began drafting a witness statement denying knowledge of any criminal scheme, but prosecutors notably hadn't even approached him yet, suggesting they already had independent corroboration. Meanwhile, the business fallout accelerated. 2 longtime bad boy producers quietly scrubbed Diddy's name from their LinkedIn profiles. Revolt Media announced a temporary content pause on any programming personally hosted by Combs. A luxury hospitality firm that had co-sponsored Diddy's 2024 New Year's bash hastily pulled promotional photos from its website. Advertising analytics firms reported a 35% drop in brand placements tied to Combs within just 72 hours. JP Morgan Chase delivered perhaps the most serious blow, notifying Combs Enterprises of their intent to review credit facilities, the kind of reputational review that had previously led banks to sever ties with firearm manufacturers. While not a default trigger, such reviews could freeze revolving credit lines, potentially forcing Diddy to liquidate assets to meet payroll for subsidiaries like Sean John. 50 Cent, never one to miss an opportunity, reposted Knight's cooperation notice on Instagram with the caption, "Guess who's not taking that shopping trip now?" A callback to his own story about Diddy's allegedly inappropriate behavior. His upcoming documentary series about Diddy had just secured distribution with a major streamer, rumored to be Apple TV+, with Knight listed as an on-camera contributor. Still here? That means this story matters to you too. If you haven't yet, please tap subscribe. It would mean the world to me as we uncover even more. But the real earthquake came when Knight authorized access to something even more explosive than the tapes. During his 4th day of testimony, Knight dropped another bombshell. He had preserved evidence related to Kim Porter, Diddy's ex-partner and mother of his children, whose 2018 death from pneumonia had never sat right with her family. Knight claimed he'd once overheard Diddy say, "Kim knows too much," during a 2009 BET Awards afterparty, a statement that took on sinister implications given Porter's rumored plans to write a tell-all memoir, but Knight offered more than hearsay. He told investigators he still had an old cell phone containing voicemails from Porter requesting emergency help during a trip to Saint-Tropez after allegedly sustaining facial injuries. The same trip, Knight claimed, where Diddy had arranged for clandestine plastic surgery to cover up evidence of abuse. While prosecutors would need to verify the authenticity of these recordings, their mere existence could provide crucial evidence for potential witness intimidation charges. The revelations sent shockwaves through the industry. Former Danity Kane members suddenly requested meetings with federal agents, expressing renewed anxiety about non-disclosure agreements they'd signed as teenagers. One claimed she'd witnessed envelope drops to parents of a minor backup dancer who'd been injured at a house party. Hush money documented only by handwritten IOUs that were later destroyed in a studio shredder. The Southern Christian Leadership Conference called for music labels to implement independent safeguarding officers for underage talent. Women in Music urged streaming platforms to freeze algorithmic promotion of Combs's catalog pending trial. Spotify declined but placed a content advisory on his artist page similar to those used for COVID misinformation. Knight's cooperation was triggering exactly the kind of industry-wide reckoning prosecutors had hoped for. Sources inside the U.S. Attorney's Office revealed that Knight's detailed financial testimony, complete with hand-drawn flowcharts showing how appearance fees moved through Cayman-registered shell companies, was helping them build money laundering charges that could expand Diddy's potential sentence from decades to life, with asset forfeiture potentially reaching 9 figures. In the end, it would all come down to one moment in court, a scene nobody could have imagined even months ago. When Suge Knight wheels into that courtroom, confined to a motorized chair he never thought he'd need, gripping a Bible he once dismissed as industry theater, the irony will be lost on no one. The man who built death row records on violence and intimidation will raise his right hand to take an oath of truthfulness. The same hands that allegedly dangled rivals from studio windows will now point across the courtroom at Sean Diddy Combs. Prosecutors will ask Knight if he sought leniency for his testimony. He'll answer yes. They'll ask if he documented crimes because he feared someday needing insurance against more powerful players. He'll likely smile and nod. And then, in a packed courtroom filled with journalists, streaming platform lawyers, and former protégés, Knight will describe a quarter-century of clandestine deals, velvet rope parties, and eyewitness accounts that could redefine how we understand hip-hop's most glamorous era. His testimony will weave together financial records, video evidence, and personal observations spanning from the East Coast-West Coast feud through the shiny suit era and into the streaming age. Each revelation building upon the last, creating a mosaic of alleged criminality that transforms isolated incidents into a sophisticated criminal enterprise. What happens after those words echo through that federal courtroom could shatter more than just two men's legacies. This trial threatens to expose the systemic failures that allowed alleged predators to operate with impunity, protected by wealth, fame, and an industry more interested in profits than people. As younger artists flood social media demanding reform, and veteran managers speak of an Epstein moment for hip-hop, one truth becomes crystal clear. The empire built on mo money, mo problems may finally be facing problems that money can't solve. The culture that once danced to Bad Boys remixes must now confront a playlist rewritten by federal indictments, sworn testimony, and secrets no longer whispered in VIP rooms but declared under penalty of perjury. In trying to destroy each other decades ago, Suge Knight and Diddy may have simply delayed their mutual downfall. Now, from behind prison walls, Knight has chosen to strike the match that could burn down everything they built. Whether this leads to justice or just more destruction, one thing is certain: hip-hop will never look at its golden age the same way again. The industry's most feared enforcer has become its most dangerous witness, and Sean Diddy Combs, who once declared he'd never stop, may finally have met the one force he can't escape. The truth, delivered by his oldest enemy, armed with receipts.